Hello everyone, no one of consequence here, back again with a new video. This is episode 74 in a series which recounts my ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is now in its 10th year. So as always, spoiler alert, in this video I will be revealing details found in this adventure module. Also revealed will be ideas extracted from this free supplement, which can be downloaded from the Greyhawk Grognard website. It's called D4 City of Spiders. To keep in mind, this is not a standalone product. You must also have a copy of D3 Vault of the Drow module to make full use of this one. Moving on, here is the player character roster for the Descent into the Depths campaign. We have 8 characters, be controlled by 5 different players. And here are the NPCs currently traveling with the party. As usual, we have the party's 2 guard dogs, but now there is also the Deep Gnome, whose name, by the way, turned out to be Jomchert, who was picked up last episode. Where we left off last time, the characters were about to enter a high-class drug den called the Mellow Mushroom. They wanted to scout out the place before returning tomorrow morning to attend Pembrig the Halfling's auction and hopefully obtain the ancient Elder Elemental God Scroll. Standing outside the place was a Type 3 demon serving as a bouncer and also collecting the cover charge for entrance, which was 1 platinum piece each. Nio was the last character to enter, and the demon sneered as she paid over the platinum coin cover charge. It obviously recognized her as a cleric of a good aligned deity. Once inside, the characters found even more demons in the establishment's antechamber. There was another Nycadaemon, just like from a couple of nights ago, or it might have been the exact same one still hanging around. I mean, who knows? Sitting at the same table was a Mesodaemon. Pembrig led the characters further into the establishment. While doing so, they passed another table at which was seated a demon type 5 Maralinth. The halfling quietly explained that demonic patrons were typically relegated to this outer area so as not to disturb the other customers. After having a look around, the characters seated themselves in a couple of booths, since there was not enough room anywhere for all of the characters to sit together. Most of the demi-human characters sat in one booth, while the rest of the party sat in another. A human female waitress soon arrived and explained the menu for this establishment. None of the characters opted to sample the mind-altering products on the menu. However, everyone did order something to drink, and a few characters placed a food order as well. In fact, Thorol requested that an order of each food item on the menu be brought to his table. As their table's order was being delivered, Varys broke out his personal stash of elf fruit and passed the pouch around. Everyone filled their pipes and began puffing away. Pembrig the Halfling was especially pleased to finally smoke a pipe of something from the surface world. He explained that the mushroom-based pipe we typically available around here just wasn't the same. Meanwhile, Gorbadok's new friend, Jomchert, just stood idly by, waiting to see what might happen involving him. At one point, Thorol came over to Varys' table and began speaking. However, Varys said he couldn't hear him over the club music thumping in the background. I don't think I ever specifically said anything about music when describing this place to the players, but Varys' player assumed it anyway, so I said sure, why not? After finishing his pipe, Pembrig said he needed to return to his shop. As he departed, he said he looked forward to seeing the characters back here again tomorrow morning for the auction. After finishing up their own food and drinks, the characters decided to return to the inn. They wanted to rebook their rooms for another night before someone else took them. By the time the party managed to find their way back to the inn, it was already time to order dinner. But Gorbadoc, true to form, decided to just drink for dinner. With a flourish, he jumped up onto the table, just like the night before, and began ordering up rounds of the Lost Venom liquor. After pounding back a few of the Lost Venom drinks, Gorbadoc at last failed the required saving throw versus poison for each one. When that happened, he immediately hurled all over the table and then passed out. The rest of the party picked up their plates and drinks and began moving away when the innkeeper came over to complain. However, Varys said he would clean up the mess, and he also told Jomchurt to take Gorbadoc back to his room to sleep it off. The Deep Gnome carried Gorbadoc back to Varys' luxury suite and placed him on the sofa. As per Varys' instructions, he put Gorb face down, so he wouldn't choke on his own vomit. While that was going on, the characters moved back to their old table. However, Niobe soon decided to retire to her room for the night, and the Sergeant Major did so as well. Varys had Jomchurt take a seat at their table and ordered him something to eat. He also reassured the Deep Gnome that everything would be alright and he would soon return to his people. Thorol decided to try chatting up a colorful-looking character sitting at a nearby table. After some conversation, the old man admitted that he too was a spellcaster and that he had come to Arrowhigh Sinlu in hopes of obtaining new spells. But beyond that, he was evasive in giving Thorol any further details about himself or his background. Meanwhile, the rest of the party soon noticed that a table of veiled dark elves were staring at them and giving them the stink eye. When asked what the problem was, they accused the characters of being surface world tourists who just make things in Arrowhigh Sinlu worse by engaging in evil practices like the slave trade. Varys offered to buy them a round of drinks, but they refused, and instead got up to leave the inn. Once they were gone, the innkeeper explained that they are a band of Drow outcasts who frequently come here. She explained that they are sometimes hostile towards other patrons, especially surface worlders, calling them tourists who only come to Arrowhigh Sinlu to slum it. Then, when they've satisfied their curiosity here, they go back to their nice safe homes on the surface world. Thorol then asked which Drow house do they belong to, but the innkeeper said that's just it, they don't belong to any house. They were once considered nobles, but they were eventually cast out from whatever Drow house they were born into, and now they are forced to fend for themselves on the streets of Arrowhigh Sinlu. The innkeeper said typical reasons for a Drow being cast out is that they are judged not ruthless and ambitious enough to survive the cutthroat world of Drow power politics. So, they are banished before their personal weaknesses can have a negative effect on the entire household. And now, because of their precarious situation, Drow outcasts often band together for mutual protection. They no longer enjoy the privileges that come with being nobility, but they are often not accepted by Drow commoners either. The innkeeper said that's the main reason why they come here, because she will serve them and they won't be hassled for who they are. After listening to the story, the characters decided to turn in for the night. After an uneventful night, the characters reassembled at the inn's common room the next morning, with enough time to have breakfast before going to the auction. As if on cue, the Drow child reappeared and offered to lead the characters back to the drug den where the auction would be held. She said her master was worried that the characters might have trouble finding it again amongst the twisting and winding streets of Arrowhigh Sinlu. And because the Elder Elemental God Scroll was at stake, he wanted to ensure that the characters arrived in time for the auction. After being expertly led back to the drug den, the characters seated themselves in different locations. Once again, the humans sat at one table, while the demi-human characters sat at another. Varys had to bribe a couple of Drow with some elf fruit in exchange for them giving up their prime location table for the auction. Since the characters had arrived a little early, they looked around and noticed various other groups and individuals gathered for the auction. For example, there was a group of strangely masked humans seated nearby. The masks were of various horrible, demonic-looking visages, obviously meant to provoke fear in the viewer. Also here was the brightly dressed old man from the inn. He told Thorol that he had heard about the auction too, and he hoped that rare magic scrolls might come up for bid. There were also various other interesting auction patrons as well. For example, there was a table of obviously high nobility Drow females. In the booth next to them was a succubus and a vampire, obviously here together. Moving on, there was a pair of mind flayers. And finally, a trio of colorfully robed wizards. Varys, Obrak, and Gorbadoc soon saw Pembreg approaching, preparing to open the auction, when he suddenly stopped short and dove into a nearby booth. Peeking out, he motioned for the characters to come to him. When they did, Pembreg whispered that the group of masked humans seated out there were agents of the demon lord Ayuz, and Pembreg was afraid they might be here looking for him. As you may remember, Ayuz was a co-sponsor of the Temple of Elemental Evil, and in fact some of his priests were running it when the characters were there. So they told Pembreg that yes, they are very familiar with Ayuz and his followers. When asked to explain himself further, Pembreg admitted that he had once actually worked for Ayuz himself as an accountant helping to manage the finances of Ayuz's empire on the surface world. However, all that wealth flowing through Ayuz's coffers was too great a temptation, and Pembreg started cooking the books in order to enrich himself. However, his scam was eventually uncovered, and Pembreg was forced to flee for his life. Gorbadoc commented that he had to admit he admired the sheer audacity of the grift. Pembreg continued by saying that after much wandering, he eventually found his way to Arrowhigh Sinlu and built a new life for himself here. But now he was afraid that these agents of Ayuz might be looking for him, having traced his movements all the way to here. Pembreg then asked Gorbadoc if he would run the auction on his behalf. That way, if the agents of Ayuz were here following the trail of a halfling, they would see a halfling running the auction. Except that it wouldn't be Pembreg, and hopefully they would consider this lead a dead end and just move on. Pembrake finished by saying that if Gorbadoc and the others would help him out, he would share the auction's profits with them 50-50. Of course, Gorb and the others accepted the offer. Anything to put one over on Ayuz and his followers, and if they could make money while doing it, then so much the better. So, Gorbadoc went out there and expertly conducted the auction, putting several items on the block and extracting good buying prices from a wide variety of bidders. What follows now are several screenshots showing various interested buyers inspecting and bidding on Pembrake's inventory. I do not now remember what came up for auction here, but one of the mind flayers was interested in it. Whatever it was, a Kuatoan stepped up too, and a bidding war ensued. Needless to say, Gorbadoc milked it for all it was worth. How I ran the auction in-game was, I told Gorbadoc's player the base value of each item when it came up for bidding. Then I just let him set the opening bid, and we went from there. As for the NPC bidders, I used a couple of bargaining random tables to help determine their reaction to the prices, to see if they were willing to bid it up and that sort of thing. Overall, it worked out pretty well. At any rate, the Kuatoan eventually won this particular auction. Next, the pair of Drow that Varys had bribed with Elfroot earlier now approached to inspect a painting that was up for bid. But then, one of the high-ranking female Drow nobles stepped up and placed a bid of her own. Once again, a bidding war broke out, which Gorbadoc gleefully exploited. Eventually, the ancient Elder Elemental God scroll came up for bid. The leader of the Ayuz group, who had been silent until now, immediately met the opening bid on it. One of the colorfully robed wizards placed a bid as well, but the Ayuz agent just kept outbidding him. He finally gave up and went back to his friends. With all other bidders silenced, the Ayuz leader thought she had won the Elder Elemental God Scroll and moved to take possession of it. But then, Varys shouted out a price, raising the bid even higher. The Ayuz agent glared at Varys and began trying to outbid him. However, she was finally forced to give up, and she conceded the auction to Varys. It was clear that she didn't have enough money to keep going in this bidding war. The group of Ayuz agents then stalked out, all of them looking at Varys with open hostility as they passed by. But he refused to be intimidated and simply returned their stares while calmly puffing on his pipe of elfroot. After the Ayuz group left, Pembrake came out of hiding. He collected the money owed him from the auction after the house subtracted its share, and then split it with Gorbadoc and the others. However, Pembrake told Varys he didn't need to actually pay his bid. The characters could have the scroll for free in gratitude for helping him. The characters then gathered back up, reoccupied their former booths, and prepared to celebrate their success in obtaining the scroll. As Varys passed around his pouch of elfroot and everyone lit up, Pembrake warned them that just because the Ayuz group had lost the auction, it didn't mean that they had given up on obtaining the scroll. Pembrake said he knows the followers of Ayuz all too well, and that the characters should remain on their guard. He felt certain that the Ayuz group would still try to obtain the scroll by any means possible. They had obviously been sent here on a mission to get the scroll, and if they returned empty-handed, then their lives could be forfeit. As the table of demi-human characters smoked their elf root, they also ordered some hallucinogenics off the mellow mushrooms menu. Specifically, Varys, Gorbadoc, and Pembrig did so. Smoking the elf root and consuming the edibles combined to put them all in a trance-like state. It was at this point that their table was approached by the same band of Drow outcasts who had been at the inn the evening before. They further berated the characters, now adding the trafficking of evil artifacts to their list of offenses. However, under the influence as they were, Varys and the others responded to the accusations with an utter lack of concern. The Drow outcasts then moved to the other table, where they specifically targeted Niobe. They asked how a supposedly good priestess could associate with such a corrupt group of evildoers. Niobe replied that sometimes it takes a temporary sacrifice of your moral code in order to advance a greater cause for good. The Drow outcast scoffed at her answer and wondered out loud just how much a loyal follower of St. Cuthbert could she be, given her choice of company. And with that, they exited the drug den, casting final disapproving glares at both tables. After waiting patiently for a couple of hours, the sober characters finally got tired of sitting around in here. Thorol had used the time to study and translate the Elder Elemental God Scroll and to make a copy of his own. And now it was time to deliver the original to the Mind Flayer and collect their reward. So Aramis ordered some water and threw it on Varys and the others to wake them up and get them moving again. Once everyone was up, the characters moved to leave the establishment. As they left, Pembrig wished the characters good luck in their quest. On their way out, the characters once again nervously passed through the demon annex of the place. They noticed that there had been a slight change in clientele. Now there was a demon type 1 Vrock here. After the stuffy, smoky confines of the drug den, being back out on the street again felt downright refreshing to the characters. Alright, well that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Please leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. If you know of a good place, please share the video. And anything you can do to help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.